The Financial Survival Network, helping you survive and thrive in the new economy. Go to CarrieLutz.com and sign up for 30 free micro trainings on financial survival.
1490 WGCH. This is Carrie Lutz, and you're listening to the Financial Survival Network, which is brought to you by Miles Franklin. They've been in business selling gold and silver for over 20 years, and I'm a customer because when you buy, they ship. For more information, find them on the web at milesfranklin.com or give them a call at 800-822-8080 and get a free quote. There's so much going on in the market, such turmoil. It's got everybody, probably you, just like me, shaking our heads, wondering which way is up, and is gold or are gold and silver really money? Well, David Banister has been studying this situation with a keen eye for a very long time, and he's here to tell us which way is up, hopefully. David, how are you?
Great. How's it going today, Carrie?
It's going nice. I mean, we've had rain in the east, but hey, it kind of goes with the dark, cloudy skies that everybody's feeling right now, you know?
It's been a tough May for a lot of people, for sure.
Sell in May and go away.
You would think every year that wouldn't keep working, but, you know, hey, who knows?
But human nature, cycles, do they ever really change, David?
No, I mean, you know, Carrie, a lot of my work is actually really centered around human behavior and the way cycles and wave patterns go, whether it's 1950s, 30s, 2010s, etc. Humans all react the same in different patterns. The key is trying to figure out where the heck you are in that pattern.
Yeah, well, you know what they say in Vegas or in any poker game, if you look around and you can't figure out who the sucker is, you're the sucker. And what's really interesting about this, David, is that, you know, I prepared for this probably my whole life. I knew this event was coming, and there's nothing that the powers that be, the forces out there, can do to make me think any differently, because the economy, we are not in a recovery. Do you see any signs of a recovery? Have you seen food stamp use go down? Have you seen the true unemployment rate go down? Have you seen governments start acting responsibly and cut down on the printing of fresh money out of thin air? Have you seen any of that, David?
No, not at all. In fact, interesting you bring up unemployment, because as the unemployment numbers have, you know, realistically risen, or people fallen off the labor force is what's happening. That's been matched by claims for disability.
I was just going to say that. I caught that scam 3 months ago. I want you to know. I picked up on it before just about everybody did, purely by accident, mind you.
Well, the trends are alarming. If you look at the charts for disability claims, you know, relative to history, it's quite an alarming uptrend in the last 3 years or so.
Yeah, and there's a law firm, I think they were originally based out of New York, but don't hold me to it, called Binder and Binder, and they advertise like there's no tomorrow. And there was an examination of it in the Wall Street Journal about all these disability companies, law firms. They're not really law firms, because you don't need to be a lawyer to go before an administrative body to represent somebody. So it's really a paralegal mill type situation. And pretty much whether you've been injured or not, you can prove disability. The standards are very low. And the beauty is 5 million people on disability, they're automatically dropped from the labor force, because you can't have disabled people as part of the labor force. So of course, when you consider that and the people who stop looking for work and everything else, wow, presto, low unemployment. But the fact of the matter is the labor force participation rate, it's at a 30-year low. And that's the truth. So we look at that disability thing, and it's a legal scam to buy off the electorate, to artificially depress unemployment. But the numbers in the final analysis don't lie, do they?
Not at all. In fact, I live in the state of Rhode Island.
Sorry to hear that.
It's a beautiful state in terms of the aesthetics, but we're definitely an entitlement state for sure. So we run much like the U.S. government here.
Yeah, broke, ready for bankruptcy. You've got cities going bankrupt. Providence, the capital, is ripe for it. I have relatives that live there, and they think that liberalism's just the greatest thing. But now that they understand that the bill is coming due and that they have to pay for these programs, and these programs are bust, maybe their attitudes will change just a little bit.
Absolutely.
So your Joe 2-pack, and I hope I'm not overusing that analogy, but you used to be Joe 6-pack, but you no longer have credit cards, so you buy 2 cans of beer at the 7-Eleven instead of 6. And what do you do, David? Where does that leave you?
Well, again, a lot of college grads, too, are coming out of school, and I think only 1 out of 2 of them are getting jobs that are, even close to maybe where they need to be in terms of their education and the salary levels they need. So you have a lot of kids coming out, age 21, 22 into the labor force. It's absolutely difficult. So it's a tough period, and the stock market has held up, but we're seeing some cracks there. Gold has been coming down since last August, September, and we should talk about that a little bit because I do have some views there on what's going on.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's on everybody's mind in the metal space. And the interesting thing is, up until a couple of weeks ago, I believed in the totally inflationary I was an inflationist. I just believed that they're just going to keep creating money until the money is worthless. But there does come a time if all of your banks collapse, just like in the Depression, and your money supply goes down 30-40%, the deflationist camp could be accurate, but for reasons that they never anticipated, that they never thought possible. Because, look, if the banks have to be liquidated, debts are going to have to be liquidated on a mass scale, which will lead to tremendous decrease in the monetary supply, but that will wind up boosting the real purchasing power of gold and silver. So what we might just be seeing is the beginning stages of a deflationary currency collapse, although I'm skeptical, but you still have to keep that possibility open, don't you?
Yes, and I don't know if any of your readers are familiar with Nikolai Kondratiev, who was a great, amazing economist from Russia.
Yeah, they killed him because he was so right?
They kicked him out of the country and whatnot. But about 10, 15 years ago, I started reading some of his work and some of his theories. And, one of the things to help people understand where we may be at in the economic cycle is what he would break it into seasons, but he would call it spring, summer, fall, winter. The winter cycle being what we've probably been in since the late 90s, maybe 2000, where debt eventually is washed out of the system. The debt levels become unsustainably high. You have the credit bubble, which we know about. And the last part of the Kondratiev winter is the part that's the most scary, to be honest. What keeps me up at night in terms of being a market investor myself, et cetera, is what's called debt repudiation. And for those who want to understand what that means that somebody refuses to pay the debt. Okay? So the first crack in that ice that we need to watch is obviously Greece, because at some point they could say, well, you know what, everybody goes screw, we're not paying you anything back. And that is what they're very, I'm sure, concerned with, because that can create a snowball effect. And that is why you're seeing the bank stocks persistently going down. People maybe are not talking about this, but the reality is the bank stocks are dropping because they would be hurt absolutely the most if we get a snowball effect there.
Yeah, and the fact is, the debt isn't sustainable. It's what is referred to as a Minsky moment, where the realization dawns on everybody, kind of an emperor has no clothes moment, where, and it happens to individuals too, where you realize one day that, hey, I can't meet my obligations, therefore you go chapter 11, chapter 7 for individuals. And we need to have this type of court for countries so that this can be done in an orderly way that doesn't bring down the entire system. But my feeling is when it starts snowballing, we will have a massive debt jubilee around the world. All debts will be forgiven. The banks will be swept away. They'll be forced to establish new banks. And what they will use for capital to establish those banks, probably going to be some type of shiny metal, is my guess, because they keep saying, like, if you remember, Helicopter Ben Bernanke recently said, there's not enough gold in the world to have a gold standard. And maybe when there's $85 trillion in currency floating around, he's right. But maybe if there's $2 trillion worth of currency floating around, he's wrong. I guess it all depends how you measure the money supply. But one way or the other, my personal belief is we're going back on a gold standard, kicking and screaming, because it all comes down to confidence, which is being eroded at a rapid rate, isn't it?
Yes, and you know, that's the end of the Kondratiev winter is debt repudiation. You wash the Dow system, and then guess what comes next? The spring, which is when things grow anew. Now that's the optimistic side, but we haven't gone through probably the worst of it yet, but you can see it bubbling up in Europe. Now, let's turn our attention to gold, and I'm just going to give people my personal opinion because this is how I've forecasted gold for many years. Mostly what you're seeing in gold, besides the fact that it's a lot of paper trading, is a human behavioral response to a prior huge bull cycle. You had gold go from $680 an ounce to $1,900 and change over 34 months. And as that rose into a parabolic peak last August, September, you know, I was out there writing articles and warning people that this is probably going to have a significant correction. What you're getting here, Kerry, is between an 8 and 13 month corrective cycle in the price of gold. And as we come towards the tail end, the next several months of this correction, you have effectively washed most of the bulls out of the gold sector, and hence that happens as price continues to deteriorate. You and I both understand, as do most of your listeners, that the fundamentals for gold are not getting worse. Okay, we know that they're getting better, so that we're not going to argue that. What we want to look at is at what point have most gold bulls or those that chased it from 1750 to 1900, when have they been washed out of the system to the point that everybody's bearish and there's only room now for the bulls to retake control? So that happens, Kerry, in my opinion, no worse than 1450-ish an ounce U.S., and that will happen between now and the September-October window. So bulls might have a few 3 to 5 more months of, you know, consolidation, maybe a little bit further decline percentage-wise, but following this final stage, a wave 4 correction we're in, we will have what I call wave 5 bull cycle, and frankly could be fairly dramatic. Wave 5s are difficult to predict. We will certainly surpass the old highs, but how high it goes can be pretty interesting.
Yeah, and you have no idea when that's going to occur. You can speculate, but anytime you try to time a market, I haven't seen people who've been very successful at it, maybe Martin Armstrong to some extent, but of late, nobody has been able to time this market because there's so much noise, so much manipulation involved, and emotions are totally out of control. That's
yeah, you won't see more than, in my opinion, 5% decline from current levels. Worst case, between now and September, October, this next several 3 to 5 months should be an opportunity to accumulate or add to positions for the gold bulls, in my opinion. And just when everybody's thrown in the towel, should start the next leg, and that's going to be pretty good.
It's going to be violent. It's not just going to be good. It's going to be extremely violent, and all the experts, the Gartmans of the world, will just be left with their mouths agape and it's never been a doubt.
Gartman, interesting guy, but he tends to basically change his mind every other day. So I don't give him too much weight. I prefer people who have a little bit more of an intermediate outlook. Because day to day, gold's very volatile. We all know that. But again, I think bottom line is we might have into September, October. Worst case, you might get down to 1450 US in a liquidation scenario, and that's about it. So we're closer to the bottom than definitely than the top.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there's any advice I could give, is invest in gold, guns, and Xanax, because you're going to probably need all three of them, and some silver also wouldn't be a bad idea.
Well, the gold stocks have been doing very well until very recently. They've had one heck of a run. So obviously people are buying arms.
What I love is that the gold stocks have become value stocks kind of overnight. They've been value stocks, I'd say, for 6 months. Before that, they really weren't. And for a sector to become a value sector, almost 100% in such a short period of time, is a huge alarm signal to me, alarm bell, that there's something afoot. And these banks, I knew since February 29th, when the Leap Day massacre occurred, where the government just jumped into the metals markets and started selling that paper with no restraint whatsoever and no efforts to cover their tracks, something really bad was happening. We're starting to see it with the banks. On that note, David, if people want to learn more about you, if you're interested in checking out David's work, where do they go?
Well, we suggest that they take a look at markettrendforecast.com. It's a single page that you sign up there if you'd like to get our free weekly reports. And then if you decide that you like my work, you might end up subscribing. We also do give a 33% discount on that page, good for the next 48 hours. So again, markettrendforecast.com.
Yeah, so go there, get the discount. Nothing in it for the Financial Survival Network. We just want you to get the information that you need so that you don't go making mistakes and running away with your emotions, because that is deadly. It's a proven, time-honored way of losing your wealth, losing your money. You just don't want to be doing it. Hey, David, thanks again for being on. It's been too long. We'll check in with you probably the beginning of the summer and try to figure out where the markets are headed. But I think we're going to know a lot better by then.
Sounds great, Terry. Thanks so much.
All right. You be well.
Take care.